Good morning and welcome to all our friends out there. This will be our 7th Mega Corazón Poetry Festival online here in San Antonio, Texas. We're broadcasting live from URBAN-15. And I really want to thank the number of people who made this possible, and that is San Antonio Area Foundation, City of San Antonio in particular, with their Department of Arts and Culture, the San Antonio Film Commission, and the great number of friends out there who've been helping us for the last few years. We're broadcasting today with a live audience, and we have a room filled of students from the San Antonio Health Careers High School. Thank you all for being here today very much. And normally when you think of poetry, you think of going to the library and getting a book and opening it and reading it. What we're trying to do is get people to go to their phones or their computers and be able to watch poetry in performance. And today, this morning, as an intro, as we always say, a poet in the hand is worth two in the book. We're going to provide you with a variety of poetry performances. We have our first guest is a veteran of teaching poetry and creative writing in the San Antonio high schools. And she's going to be doing her poems live. We're going to follow that by a young poet who likes using music, vocab. And vocab, her variety of stuff is kind of a funk, hip-hop, very influenced by blues and spirituals. And following that, we're going to have a special guest today. It's a young lady whose first public online or broadcast performance. She's going to be working with our former poet laureate, Carmen Tafoya, and that's Genesis Linares. And she's going to be working with poems that she's been writing these last few years, and she's only 16 years old. So this is an amazing treat for y'all to watch. And then finally, we have Don Mathis, who's a local person who uses the concept of poetry as reenactment. And he's going to be doing Walt Whitman poems in the style and clothing of the particular year that Walt Whitman wrote the poems. So let's get the show started. We have Moby Warren. She's with us tonight, and this is her first appearance with Mega Corazón. So, Moby, please.
Wow, what an absolute joy and honor to be here opening up Mega Corazón. I'm going to share with you several of my poems. George got it a little wrong. I actually was a mathematics teacher. I have taught creative writing, but math is a kind of poetry to me as well, and I'll talk a little bit about that with a couple of poems. But I'm going to start out with a poem called Squirrel's Hands. When I was a little girl, my favorite aunt, my Aunt Tony, loved tigers, and she often would say, when I come back in my next life, I'm coming back as a tiger. And so this would initiate lots of family conversations. Well, what are you going to come back? What are you going to come back as? And this poem references that, but it also references the handwork my grandmother did and what a deep, deep impression her sewing and sewing my clothes had on me. Squirrel's hands. My aunt used to say she wanted to come back a tiger in her next life. My father said he would return an eagle. My mother preferred something small and simple, a sparrow. Grandmother crossed over without ever saying. But recently I have spotted her. She is a squirrel living close by. She measures acorns that resemble thimbles and raises mast to scissor teeth. Already she senses the heartbeats of life continuing beyond her. When she sewed, the exact gestures of my grandmother's hands were like a squirrel's examining hickories and walnuts. She did not cut thread so long it tangled, for she knew its umbilical weight. The cloth in her hands acquired vibrato, each stitch pulsed with apt and supple care. She did not have to say, I will return a squirrel. She knew I would recognize her hands. So you might want to give some consideration yourself what you plan to come back as, or looking at animals, what relatives might be living amongst you. This next poem is another kind of a grandmother poem, but it has to do with little grandmother plants. I don't know if you're familiar with a chile called the chile Pekin. It's a little tiny red hot. It turns out to be the ancestor of all chile plants. And I always wanted to write a poem about chile Pekins because the mockingbirds eat them in my backyard and then poop out the seeds, and I now have 15, 20 chile Pekin bushes. I gather the peppers, and I always thank the plants, and I call them my little grandmothers. And I finally, in the way that poetry brings unexpected things together, it was looking at a painting by Frida Kahlo, her self-portrait with monkeys, that brought my Chile Pekin poem to life. This poem is Mole Negro de Oaxaca, after Self-Portrait with Monkeys, Frida Kahlo, 1943. Before you sat here, long before you were held in the soft black arms of monkeys, their spidery fingers a blessing over your heart, songbirds plucked Chile Pekins, those red little grandmothers of all Chiles. They carried them in their gullets and dropped the seeds over Azteca lands. Each tint of soil coaxed seed in new directions, pasilla or chipotle, guajillo and ancho, your favorite chihuahuas. I can see it in your eyes, your proud back. You have roasted and soaked the chiles, measured pumpkin seed, anise, and raisin. You have broken bitter chocolate into pieces to mix with your own tears. You have counted cinnamon sticks and cloves and tossed the colors of your laughter into the cast iron pot. The aroma of Mole Negro de Oaxaca enters the garden. Soon you will rise and announce the day's fiestas. From the earth of your heart, we will be fed. I take a lot of my inspiration and strength from the natural world, plants and animals. And my daughter and I, she's now 40 years old, but ever since she was very small, we loved taking walks together and trying to learn to identify plants and learn more about them. And one of our favorite plants here in Texas is the native Texas persimmon tree. And if you know it, it has these wonderful dark purple plums that you can pluck and eat. And Emily and I love to pluck those and eat them. And I wanted to write a poem that really expressed how loving that tree has also brought my daughter and me in a special closeness. So this is Sananto Persimmons for Emelita. Mother and daughter, because you walk beneath the summer sun in a state of adoration, your steps slow and light. Come eat the black plums of my body. Rest your cheeks against my smooth skin, peeled to shades of dove and primrose. Press your ears to the polish of my trunk, and listen to the ebony wood of my heart, where mandolins are sleeping. Watch my palette of fruit as it ripens, astringent green to sweet, jammy black, the way the deepening years pledge you to the earth and bind you to each other. I am a runner. It's another place where I take great joy. I'm not a very fast runner, and I only started running when I was 53 years old, which is proof that you can start to do anything at any time you want. So I have a couple poems that actually were inspired by runs. The first one was a trail run I did, I think it was a 5 or 10K at Salado Creek here in San Antonio. And as we were running, and I love the sound of those footfalls and people's huffing and puffing breath. Suddenly, we were stopped by a sound, this incredible sound of honking overhead, and we looked up, and there was these flocks and flocks of sandhill cranes passing overhead. It was really quite miraculous. Sandhill cranes at Salado Creek. Along the creek's curl, light rain falls. Snails drag the wet gravity of shells. Birds preen mud into feathers to blend with brown grasses. A millipede of heartbeats, we run a shared chord of breath. Then ears shake with tumbled ecstasy. Oh, bugle and oh, accordion. Wave and wave and wave of shimmering V-lines. Strings of prayer flags. Parents singing children across the sky. Sometimes my runs turn into unexpected things, and the run becomes a different type of mission. And this is a poem that talks about 4 of those times, and also references, I've worked for many years as a volunteer with an organization, Wildlife Rescue and Rehabilitation, and this poem is also braided in with some of that work. Early morning runs that became rescues. 1. A young opossum hit by car, 4 dead babies strewn about her like spokes of a wheel. I lifted the 4 survivors, bewildered and squirming, folded my shirt into a pouch and tucked them in. 2. A nighthawk with broken wing crouched in speckled grasses. As I lifted her, dark eyes swallowed me. Tiny beak opened to a wide bell. 3. Heart froze, then sped, a buck hanging from a spear-tipped fence. Pierced groin, haunches wedged, thread of breath fading. I roused neighbors. We heaved him up and over. He bounded, leapt, he lived. 4. A hiss like castanets stopped me. The false rattle of a bull snake tangled in garden webbing. Praise the keeled scales that excited my hands. I cut him free. So I mentioned that for many years I was a middle school and high school mathematics teacher. To me, I know mathematics is very useful in the real world, but that is not the reason at all why I pursued it. To me, I saw this incredible beauty in mathematics that actually reminded me very much of my other passion, poetry. There's a wonderful quote by a mathematician, David Eugene Smith, that says, "What, after all, is mathematics but the poetry of the mind? And what is poetry but the mathematics of the heart?" And so mathematics tends to creep into my poems, and if you listen, you'll find some mathematical references in this poem. Nature is everywhere. You don't have to live near to a national park or even a pocket park in your neighborhood. You don't even have to have a yard. Insects are everywhere, and there's probably no kitchen anywhere that doesn't have ant visitors. And one night, apparently, I had poured some honey and neglected to see I had dropped a little spot of it on my kitchen counter. And when I woke up the next morning, I found a miracle. Kitchen counter mandala. Sweet dime, overlooked spill, a drop of pale honey. 30 polite sisters arrive and space themselves round the circle to sip at the golden pool. Geometers swallow in unison, abdomens vibrate in joy, the sine wave of a metronome, this circumference of ant bodies burnished black and gold, like polished spokes on the wheel of a clipper ship, careening straight for my heart. And there are mathematical references in this next poem. One of the things in mathematics that really fascinates me are equations that, if you graph them, result in curves, spirals, or loops. And there's a very famous mathematical curve called the spira mirabilis, the marvelous curve. It's also called the logarithmic spiral or polar curve. And this poem references that spira mirabilis and brings together an encounter with a snail and also my deep concern with the effects of climate change that we're all experiencing. So it kind of all comes together. But there are, I think, 5 or 6 references to that spira mirabilis, because this is a curve that occurs over and over again in the natural world. So I'll hold up fingers when the curve is being referenced in something in the natural world, and you can kind of keep track. Spira mirabilis. A white snail, globular drop, crawls up the smooth trunk of a persimmon tree. She tucks her gel body, mucosal, wet, into her spiral chamber and closes a lid against summer heat. An equation maps her shell, logarithmic spiral, polar curve, the curl of ice on Mars, or spin of water to halt a forest fire. Our eyes, too, tucked in their orbital cribs, trace the galaxy's ribs of fire. Cells in our own corneas slide the wondrous spiral. Small pearl, snail at rest, hidden cells of vision, guide us now through drought and flame and flood. Turn our course, return the cooling hand of love. I find great pleasure and also sometimes great strength in times when I'm feeling discouraged, and sesame seeds became one of those small presences that helped me be renewed and understand how we're all part of one family. Sesame seeds pray. May you burn us to make soot for ink, a calligraphy of caves filled with treasure. Make of us a unit to measure the square root of 2, the diagonal of a holy brick. Tap our pods, we are locks clicking open. Iftaya sim sim, open sesame. Open us. Press us for oil, ferment us into wine, sprinkle your breads, season your soups. Take comfort in our earth-colored coats. Buff, tan, gold, brown, red, gray, black. We are little thrones of health. We are seeds of reconciliation. We are your oldest. Mix us with honey and cumin. And one last poem, inspired by cocoons I saw this winter when I was feeling greatly discouraged. Caleta moth cocoon. 4 rattles the color of bone dangle by single loops of silk on twigs of Texas silverleaf. It is winter. The government is closed. Garbage piles at national parks. Families huddle at the border. Yet this morning, I can still be held spellbound by a 2-inch pendant, the gray pearl cocoon of a Caleta silk moth. The ghosts of my hands slip into her sleeping vessel, She is curled and pulsing. A trellis of insect bone holds the black rose she is becoming. Molecules paint a stripe of moonlight across her developing wings, scatter sapphires, circle her plush body with a bright red collar. Some night she will awaken. The spread of her black wings will be soft as petals. Her nuptial flight will shift the season and shake the stars. Come, she will say, it is not too late. Come, resurrect the world.
That was pretty amazing. Now let's take a quick shot here of Vocab. She's our kind of a hip-hop poet in residence at URBAN-15. She performs everywhere, but Vocab.
We're going to change up the energy on this next piece. It's about haters. So I think I have to clear my throat before I go into this piece. It's called Jade Eyes. It's about jealousy and haters. All that little stuff pushed to the side. Jade stole my range, left his on my window pane, reflecting green flecks of disrespect in her eyes. Yeah, Jade stole my fame, left me with nothing, say my name, dissecting my pride with emerald knives in her eyes. I didn't suspect she was a bone collector. She'll chip and chisel if you let her. The poison ivy screaming in her smile. I didn't predict she'd be a vicious pretender. She'll hiss and she'll hate till you surrender. The fruit of deception is ripening on her vines. Jade eyes, epidemic of envy. Jade eyes, everything she wants to be.
Everything she wants to be.
Jade eyes. Ooh, she ain't a friend of me. She just my enemy. Jade eyes. She jealous of me. I got this ill feel of malcontent and ill will. I keep my eyes peeled, she look at me with steel grill. Mean mugged eyes buck like she can take my man. When she resolve her plan, blow toxins out her diaphragm. It's like she got a diagram of color-coded plots. She playing target practice where I stand amongst the spot. She wanna stop my shot and have her life replaced with mine. But envious is crime, and girl, you must
be out your mind.
She think my life's sublime, gets curious and not aligned. Sleep up and just one time I see the dagger at my spine. I'm dodging green blades, no acid rain on my parade. I see you playing Jade, you're faking this all a charade. You're faking this all a charade. You're faking this all a charade, yeah. Ooh. Jade eyes, epidemic of envy. Jade eyes, everything she wants to be.
Everything she wants to be.
Jade eyes.
Ooh, she ain't a friend of me.
She just my enemy.
Jade eyes.
She jealous of me. Ooh. Yeah. Jade stole my range. Jade took everything, yeah. Jealous heifer.
Antonio's first city poet laureate and also being state poet laureate of the state of Texas. And I've been involved with Mega Corazón since the very beginning, in fact, probably since before the beginning. And I feel that it's so exciting to see poetry taken to people across the world, taken to young people, taken to old people, taken to everybody. Because poetry is supposed to be our voice. Poetry is supposed to be what we're feeling on the inside. And you don't have to have a lot of years to have feelings. We start off with feelings right away. And if we're lucky, we can put those feelings down in words. So sometimes it takes a lot of practice. And you know, you look at a basketball player, and a basketball player, if they really want to be a good basketball player, they watch the moves that other people make. And then they practice a lot, lots of hours. Well, we writers do too. We read a lot. We watch how other writers do things. And then we find our own way, and we practice. We write, and we write, and we write. So while once you become a writer, it's kind of for life. It sticks. You want to do it forever. But it doesn't take somebody with a lot of years to write good poetry. And we have an excellent example of that right now, right here, in a young student named Genesis Linares, who we have the pleasure to have with us here today. And Genesis and I are going to be sharing some of our poetry with you. Genesis is 16 years old. She's a high school student in San Antonio, and she's been writing already for several years, but she feels a little uncomfortable about her poems in English because she's only been in this country and speaking English for 5 months. Génesis, qué maravilla. I think it's just amazing that you have the courage and you have that desire, like a poet, to express yourself not only in Spanish, but also in another language that you've only been speaking for 5 months. You've only been learning for 5 months. Do you ever hesitate and think, I can't do this, when you're writing a poem? How do you write?
Yo siempre he pensado que los sentimientos de nosotros cuentan y al momento de escribir un poema pienso en mis sentimientos, por supuesto, es lo principal, pero pienso en lo que pueden llegar a sentir las demás personas al momento de leer mis poemas. Eso es lo que más me incita al momento de escribir un poema.
Qué bonito, exacto y muy profesional. Sí. ¿Nos haces el favor de leernos un poema en español?
Por supuesto.
I'm going to ask her to start with one of her poems in Spanish.
Ok, por supuesto. El primer poema se llama Un mundo compartido. Conocí palabras, conocí ausencias, aprendí de personas y entendí de preferencias. Comprendí significados que me envolvieron en sus pecados. Me perdí en mi propio mundo y muchas cosas me cambiaron. Me enseñaron de humildad y la apliqué con la humanidad. Caí 1000 veces y 1000 veces me levanté. Toqué fondo, pero lo usé de impulso. Perdí todo, pero lo recuperé luchando por ello. ¿Dónde estoy ahora? En un mundo compartido, subdividido en muchos otros, donde caminamos juntos, pero pensamos diferente a los otros. Y aunque a veces este mundo me parezca incierto, este mundo es más real que mis propios pensamientos.
Wow, magnífico. Isn't that amazing? Génesis, I love the way you create a contrast between, in each of they're almost like couplets, but not couplets in the traditional sense. They're couplets in a conceptual sense, like conocí palabras, conocí ausencias. I knew words and I knew absences, and perdí todo y lo recuperé luchando por ello. You know, I lost everything and then I gained everything back. It's a contrast and it's a balance at the time. It's almost a guide to survival. And I imagine you've been through a lot of changes, and poetry was one way that you dealt with those changes. I'm going to read one of Genesis's poems in English. Yeah, I know. Y'all are saying, how can she be writing in English when she's just been here 5 months? But she says she wrote it in Spanish first, right? And then translated it, worked on translating it, writing it in English. We don't always translate word to word. We have to translate the emotion. So she struggled, and she wrote this poem, which I'm going to share with you in English, called It's Illogical. But this is Genesis's poem, not mine, okay? Does time stand still? I frequently ask the wind. And yes, I'm breathless to ask time for time. I take a deep breath, and then I think, what should I ask time? It's senseless to ask it for time, so I ask it for more verses, one by one, verse after verse. Time flies, and yet I feel it dragging, breathless. Once again, I search for something, that which I really feel. So again, I ask time for time, even though it's illogical, understanding that in the blink of an eye, time breezes by. To Genesis. You know, Genesis, I know native speakers of English that have problems putting their thoughts down on paper. And here you have created an entire poem in English from your emotions and your thoughts and your experiences and your struggle. And I try to tell people who are struggling to write poetry that poetry is the easiest thing in the world to write. People say, but it's so abstract. It's like, no, it's concrete. It's what you're seeing and what you're feeling and what you're experiencing, and the bird that's flying overhead and the plant that's growing next to you, and you don't have to explain why, because there's no wrong in poetry. Poetry is simply what we're experiencing, whether it's problems, confusion, impatience, or love. And I understand that one of the poems that you've written is your favorite, and it's a love poem called Te Quise. Would you share that one with us?
Sí, por supuesto. Te quise, como si los días no acabaran. Lo hice, como si la vida fuese infinita. Me detuve, te esperé más de una vez parada. Fallé, claro que lo hice, todos lo hacemos. Estuve a tu lado y me alegré de hacerlo. Me lastimaste y sigue doliendo, pero te quise. Y aunque lo hice como si tú hubieses sido todo, entendí que tú me quisiste como si yo hubiese sido nada.
Wow. ¿Quieres que yo lea la traducción?
Bueno, ya esto mucho de hablar de mí, es momento de que
Ay, pero
Carmen.
no, yo creo que ellos también quisieran saber algo de qué se trata este poema. For those of you who are not bilingual in Spanish, I'm going to share the translation of it that Genesis did to English. And I encouraged her not to make it an exact translation, a technical translation, because technical translations come out really weird, like the instructions you find on how to put something together, you know. Please put item A under item B, put in with. And you're like, what does it mean? You know, it's a technical translation from a different language. So technical translations don't have corazón, they don't have alma. So I told her, feel free, because when you write something in a different language, you're really writing a different version of the same poem, and this is such a great poem. So I'm gonna read that. I know you're getting a little shy of all the attention you're getting right now, but I'm gonna read that to you in English, and it's called I Loved You. I loved you like endless days. I loved you like blossoms that never fade. I loved you like time was standing still. And like an endless life, I stopped, stood waiting, and failed. Of course I did. Everyone does. I was happy by your side, trusting, but you hurt me, and I'm hurting still. But I loved you with everything I had. You loved me like I was nothing. So it's a very powerful poem. You know, sometimes the stereotype about poetry, the image of poetry that we get, is that it's only super fancy, super overly flowery words. And while poets love words, it doesn't take just fancy words. Sometimes it's simple words, and they're very powerful. And in this poem, you've really managed to take it down to its bare essence. There's no clutter, there's no trash, there's nothing that can be gotten rid of. When I talk to writing students, I tell them, you got a great poem here, but take out 5 words. And they're like, which 5? Find the useless ones. And they're like, none of them are useless. I said, read it again. What words could you cross off? Or if you have problems doing that, underline the ones that are really important in the poems. And if you could only keep 5, underline which are the most important 5. And then work from there. And find out that you're really maybe using too many words. Well, in this poem, Genesis has managed to absolutely get rid of all the clutter and leave just the bare essence of the emotion. So I think it's quite an accomplishment. And yes, I will read some of my own stuff too.
Bueno, yo creo que ya está mucha atención sobre mí. Es momento de que queremos escuchar tus poemas. Así que...
Okay. I'm going to read a poem called Marked. It's an oldie. I'm going to read mainly oldies right now because Mega Corazón continues tonight, and tonight I'm going to read the really new stuff. But this one's called Marked because sometimes I think we get stereotypes about people, and we judge them by having an imperfection, a mark on them. My daughter used to write on her hand when she was 8 or 9 years old. She was always writing on her hand, and the teacher would always scold her because the hand wasn't clean and clear like everybody else's hand. And I thought that she was seeing those things, the teacher was seeing those things as flawed or imperfect because they had marks on them. But if we think in the Native American sense, the indigenous way of thinking, for instance, on their most beautiful stone is turquoise. And the most valuable turquoise among the Navajo and the Apaches is the turquoise that's marked, that has a big streak down the middle. It has a bunch of little silver and black and lead-colored marks on it because the imperfections are where the beauty is. Maybe the imperfections are what make us beautiful. So this poem is about having a mark on life, making a mark on life, using our lives adrede, on purpose, and maybe finding our purpose in life with how we lead each day. So here's the poem Marked. Never write with pencil, mija. It's for those who would erase. Make your mark proud and open, brave, beauty folded into its imperfection like a piece of turquoise marked. Never write with pencil, mija. Write with ink or mud or berries grown in gardens never owned, or sometimes, if necessary, blood. So that's my poem, Marked. People say, what does the blood mean? And I say, well, the blood is your life. You're writing with what you do. You're writing, you're making your life out of each action, every day, each smile, each interaction, the way you treat people. All of that makes a mark on life. So do it on purpose. Do it adrede, as we would say in my barrio. And I also want to share another short one before Genesis and I do something kind of experimental and fun that we've planned. I'm going to read one that has to do with that which is given to us, that which is our culture, that which is our inheritance. It's a poem about a mother feeding a child. And if you think about all the times that somebody fed you, that you came home starved from school, and maybe you were really little and your big brother made you a sandwich, or maybe your grandma made you a taquito, or your mom had a caldo on the stove. brought you a little bowl of something just for you, and you think of all the work that went into that, and you think of not just that food, but all the generations that have passed, and all the inheritance that's being passed on in the spoonful of what you take, all the love that they could give to help you keep your culture and your inheritance. So it's called feeding you. I have slipped chile under your skin, secretly wrapped in each enchilada, hot and soothing, carefully cut into bitefuls for you as a toddler, increasing in power and intensity as you grew until it could burn forever. Silently spiced into the rice, soaked into the bean caldo, smoothed into the avocado, I have slipped chile under your skin, drop by fiery drop, until it ignited the sun altar fire in your blood. I have squeezed cilantro into the breast milk, made sure you were nurtured with the taste of green life and corn stalks, with the wildness of thick leaves, of untamed monte, of unscheduled growth. I have ground the earth of these Americas in my molcajete until it became a fine and piquant spice, sprinkled it surely into each spoonful of food that would have to expand to fit your soul. Dear son, dear mijo, dear mija, dear corn, chile, cilantro, mijitos, this is your herencia. This is what is yours. This is what your mother fed you to keep you alive. Thank you. And then we're going to try something playful. And it goes between two languages because I wrote the original in Spanish or Tex-Mex, my native language. And then I wrote, when it came time to be published in the book, the publisher said, can we get an English version of this too? He knew better than to ask me for a translation. And so I wrote it in English. So what we're going to do now is, it's a poem called La Mislo. At the time I grew up in the schools, they were criticizing us for everything. They were criticizing us for being Mexican American. They were criticizing us for speaking Spanish. They were punishing us for speaking Spanish. We were given the message we had nothing to give. And so this is a poem from the perspective of two young students talking to each other who feel they have nothing to give the system. Well, they know they have something, but they don't think the system will let them teach anything. And it's all a one-way learning. The best learning is when the teachers and the students teach each other, and we go through the process together. But in this, it's in the student's voice, and I'm going to read a verse in English, and she's going to read that verse in the original, in Spanish, and then I'm going to read a verse in English, the English version, and she's going to read it in the Spanish version, and follow us along for La Miss Lowe. La Miss Lowe was tall and thin and wore her short pale hair tight around her small head like the skin of a pea. La Rosary always wanted to style her hair so she'd look pretty, but since she was a teacher and we were just kids, La Rosary told her nothing.
La Miss Lowe era alta y delgada y llevaba su pelo pálido en su cabecita, como la cáscara de un chícharo. La Rosary siempre quiso peinarla, bien para que se viera bonita, pero como era maestra y nosotros chamacos, no le dijo nada.
La Miss Lowe would stand close to Mr. Mason, thinking, we think, to look more elegant by standing next to a man, even if he was married and with his crew cut that only he thought made him look cool. But when he turned his head to talk to her, to address a few words to her between classes, in the noisy halls, it was just them, the two of them, hero and heroine, between all of us kids. And she would feel mature, elegant, intimate, laughing slowly and so politely at anything with him.
La Miss Lowe se paraba cerquita de Mr. Manson, pensando, creemos, hacerse más elegante, al parecerse cerca de un hombre, Aún así era casado y con su cricut que solo él pensaba le hacía verse más galán. Pero cuando él volteaba la cabeza para decirle unas palabras, entre clases, en el corredor, eran no más ellos dos, héroe y heroína. Entre todos nosotros, chamacos, y se sentía ella, grande, elegante, íntima, riéndose lentamente y forma de cualquier cosa con él.
La Miss Lowe didn't talk much, tried to raise her chin like a noble figure, to let her silence, guardian of the princess, speak for her, speak complex, sensitive things, to hold her face expressionless, revealing the nobility of her soul, to model a high example for these uncultured children.
La Miss Lowe no hablaba mucho. Trataba de levantar la cabeza, como figura noble, de dejar a su silencio, como guardián de la princesa, hablar por ella cosas complicadas y más sensibles, de mantener la cara sin expresión, mostrando así la nobleza de su alma, de dar un ejemplo altivo a estos niños incultos. La Rosary decía que peinándole el pelo lleno y suave, dejándolo crecer un poquito más y poniéndole unos cuantos rizos, pintándole la cara con más color y enseñándole a guardar menos sus emociones, a mostrar más tranquilamente su gracia natural, que la podría hacer verse más bonita.
La Rosary said that by styling her hair full and soft, letting it grow a little longer, putting in a few curls, putting more color in the makeup, teaching her to let herself go, to be more natural, that she could make her look prettier. La Miss Lowe was tall and thin and stood like a statue of civilization amid chaos, while La Rosary saw her like fertile ground awaiting the planting, with Rosary wanting to cultivate with tender care her garden.
La Miss Lowe era alta y delgada y posaba con una estatua de civilización, sin caos, mientras la Rosy la veía, como tierra fértil, esperando semillas, y Rosary allí, queriendo cultivar con cariño su jardín.
Did you get number 7?
Le decía yo, y abría ella su libro con un suspiro largo, diciendo, yo le podría hacer verse muy bonita, pero como era maestra y nosotros chamacos, no le dijo nada.
Did you get number 7? I'd ask her, and she would open her book with a long sigh, saying, I could make her look really pretty. But since she was a teacher and we were just kids, La Rosary told her nothing. Thank you both, all of you, and for all of you out there on the stream in the world, for listening to both of us and to our poetry, and for a little bit about how poetry works between languages. In any language, you can combine 2 languages in one poem, like we did in La Miss Lowe. You can utilize the language of baby talk. You can utilize the language of the streets. You can utilize anything that communicates between human beings, because that's what poetry is all about. Thank you.
Yes.
Good morning. My name is Walt Whitman. I was born almost 200 years ago, May 31st, 2019. They say I died in 1892, but I'm still around. Call it a miracle. Why, Well, who makes much of miracles? As to me, I know of nothing but miracles. Whether I walk the streets of Manhattan or dart my eyes towards the roofs of the houses to the sky, or wade with naked feet along the beach just at the edge of the water, or stand under the trees in the woods, or talk by day with anyone I love, or sleep in the bed at night with anyone I love, or sit at the table at dinner with the rest, or look at strangers opposite me riding in the bus, or watch honeybees busy around a hive of a summer forenoon, or the animals feeding in the fields, or the wonderfulness of insects in the air, or the wonderfulness of sundown, of stars shining so quiet at night, or the delicate thin curve of the new moon in spring. These, with the rest, are to me miracles, the whole referring yet each distinct and in its place. To me, every hour of the light and every hour of the dark is a miracle. Every cubic inch of space is a miracle. Every square yard of the surface of the earth is spread with miracles. Every foot of the interior swarms with miracles. To me, the sea, the river, is a continual miracle. The fishes that swim, the rocks, the motion of the waves. What stranger miracles are there? I've been called all kinds of names. Freethinker, patriot, revolutionary, sentimental, modest, energetic. And I've been called huckster, rough, disorderly, fleshly, grotesque, unsentimental, immodest, lazy. You can call me what you want, but it's what I believe that's what's important. I believe a leaf of grass is no less than the journey work of the stars. And the ant is equally perfect. And the grain of sand or the egg of the bird. And the tree toad is a chef for the highest. And the running blackberry would adorn the parlors of heaven. And the narrowest hinge in my hand puts to scorn all machinery. And the cow crunching with depressed head surpasses any statue. And a mouse is miracle enough to stagger sextillions of infidels. I was born May 31st, 1819, in a house my father built in West Hills, Long Island. He built it right. It's still standing, right across the 4-lane highway from Walt Whitman Mall. Dad moved to Brooklyn just before my 4th birthday, but my heart always remained in the wild. School didn't interest me. I dropped out at age 11, but I would shout Shakespeare and Homer to the ocean. I devoured James Fenimore Cooper and Sir Walter Scott. Their work left me simmering. I wanted more. I would walk up and down Broadway in New York, from the ferry landing to 14th Street. Those 3 miles were full of theaters, full of boarding houses, full of bars and restaurants, full of life. And I would swim in it as the sea, and I wanted more. The songs of Rossini, Bellini, Mozart, and Verdi enthralled me, and I would sing them loud. I talked to everyone, cooks and clerks and foreigners and firemen, carpenters and blacksmiths. I would walk into a place all 6 feet of me, barrel-chested, 180 pounds, baggy pants, tucked in my leather boots, and I would ask questions. Stranger, if you, passing, meet me and desire to speak to me, why should you not speak to me? And why should I not speak to you? I gained inspiration from many authors, musicians, and stable hands, and barmaids. I gained inspiration from old men. I knew a man, a common man, the father of 5 sons, and in them, the father of sons, and in them, the fathers of sons. The man was a wonderful vigor, calmness, beauty. The shape of his head, the pale yellow and white of his hair, and his beard the immeasurable meaning of his black eyes, the richness and breadth of his manners. I used to go and visit him. He was wise also. He was 6 feet tall. He was over 80 years old. His sons were massive, clean, bearded, tan-faced, handsome. They and his daughters loved him, and all who knew him loved him. They did not love him by allowance. They loved him with personal love. He drank water only. The blood showed in his face, clear through his clear brown skin. He was a frequent hunter and fisherman. He sailed his boat himself. He had a firearm presented to him by his friends, and he had a ship, a boat that his friends built for him. When he went with his 5 sons and many grandsons to hunt or fish, you would pick him out as the most beautiful and vigorous of the gang. You would wish long and hard to be with him. You would wish to sit by him in the boat, that you might touch each other. I gained inspiration from a lot of people, a lot of sources. Many people, many poets write from torment and from pain, from misery. That's okay. Me, I write what makes me happy. No, I write from what makes me ecstatic. I write from nature, from humanity, from the pieces of the cosmos. I just did what I did because I did it. I wrote in the day and age when people would put a skirt on a table so the legs would not be shamed. But I celebrated legs all the way down to the aromatic feet. I started writing Leaves of Grass in 1850. I published it 5 years later, even set some of the type myself. 12 poems filled 83 pages. I didn't even put my name on it, but I did include my picture. Hand on hip, jaunty pose, cockeyed hat. Maybe you've seen that picture. I figured the absence of an author's name would emphasize the belief that the voice in Leaves of Grass was for anyone. You have to realize, before Leaves, poets were a serious and pretentious lot. Grandiose themes and romantic subjects were set to strict rules of rhyme and meter. Mother thought my poems were muddled. The fact that very few of my poems rhymed bothered a lot of critics, so I critiqued myself. I wrote unsigned reviews of Leaves, and a fair amount of them were published. My favorite book blurbs were designed to attract the common man. An American bard at last. We announce a great philosopher, perhaps a great poet. But my stroke of luck was mailing the manuscript to one of my favorite writers. I had never met Ralph Waldo Emerson, never corresponded with him. We had no friends in common. I had no reason to expect a reply. Quote, I rubbed my eyes a little to see if the sunbeam were no illusion, Emerson wrote back from Concord. He wrote that Leaves of Grass is the most extraordinary piece of wit and wisdom that America has yet contributed. I couldn't have said it better myself. Sometimes people ask me about the title. Why Leaves of Grass? A child once asked me, what is the grass? And he fetched it and he handed it to me with full hands. How could I answer a child? I don't know what it is any more than he does. I guess it must be the flag of my disposition out of the hopeful green stuff woven. Or I guess it could be the handkerchief of the Lord, a scented gift and dropped on purpose, bearing the owner's name some way in the corners that we may see and remark and say, whose? Or I guess the grass itself is a child that produced the babe of the vegetation. I guess it could be a uniform hieroglyphic, and it means sprouting alike in broad zones and narrow zones, growing among black folks as among white, Canuck, Tuckahoe, Congressman, Cuff. I gave them the same, I received them the same. And now, it seems to me, the beautiful uncut hair of Graves. I never got rich from Leaves of Grass. That was not my intention. Nonetheless, I could have used the $40,000 the original book sells for nowadays. I am with you, Americans, citizens of the world, through leaves of grass. I am with you, you men and women of a generation or ever so many generations hence. I project myself and I return. I am with you. And I know how it is. Just as you feel when you look at the river and the sky, I felt. Just as any of you is one of a living crowd, I was one of a crowd. Just as you are refreshed by the gladness of the river and the bright flow, I was refreshed. Just as you stand and lean on the rail of the bridge, yet hurry with the swift current, I stood and was hurried. I have long prided myself as an American. I abhorred slavery because it hindered the destiny of the United States. I felt that the introduction of slavery into new territories would discourage people from migrating to those areas. White labor could never economically compete with slave labor. I was thinking of the slaves at the auction block when I wrote, I Sing the Body Electric. My poem celebrates the beauty, the dignity, the strength of people of color. In contrast to the prevailing stereotypes, I emphasize the centrality of black persons to the future of America. Regarding our Native Americans, I prefer the term Aborigine because Indian is such a European word. I served for a time with the Indian Bureau of the Department of the Interior, and I met with several impressive Native delegations. Their manners and conversations were animated and significant. I watched the annihilation of the Aborigines through the newspaper accounts, and I could see the demise of a culture. And to preserve the Aborigine legacy, I favor renaming more of America's places and rivers with the original word. It's not enough to have the most important city, Manhattan, or the biggest river, Mississippi, or the biggest state, Texas, or is it Alaska, to have an Aborigine name. Native words have such an authenticity. They fit the American landscape, and they color the language with the original echoes. The echoes of my words have been reverberating around quite a while. Read my poetry should the sound grow faint. I want to leave you now with words to strive for, words to live by. This is what you shall do. Love the earth and the sun and the animals. Despise riches. Give alms to everyone that asks. Stand up for the stupid and crazy. Devote your income and labor to others. Hate tyrants. Argue not concerning God. Have patience and indulgence with the people. Take off your hat to nothing known or unknown, or to any man or number of men. Go freely with powerful, uneducated persons, and with the young, and with the mothers of families. Read these leaves in the open air every season of every year of your life. Re-examine what you've been told at school or church or in any book. Dismiss whatever insults your soul. And your very flesh shall be a great poem and have the richest fluency, not only in words, but in the silent lines of its lips and face, and in between the lashes of your eyes, and in every motion and joint of your body. Go in peace. Thank you.
You do it again next year because Walt Whitman is something we have to preserve in this nation. We're going to take a 5-minute online break at this moment. So teachers will have a card up on the online screen. You can get back on or you can stay on. And we have a change of set here real quickly here in the room. So thank you very much. Let's take it down.
My name is Jacinto Jesus Cardona. Good morning, aka Jesse. Welcome to Urban-15 Group 6 Annual Mega Corazon, a celebration of poetry inspiring the Pegasus in all of us. Maybe you too will heed the call. It's good to see you. Now, I actually was just named Jacinto after my father. I had no middle name. But when I was taken to be baptized, the priest asked, "What is the child's name?" And my mother very proudly said, "Jacinto." "Oh no," the priest said, "that's a pagan name. It's Greek mythology." But my mother, quick thinker that she is, being in church, she said, "Oh, he has a middle name. Jesus." Jesus. The priest was pleased. So you can write about someone's name. Look up the history. There's a poem waiting for you everywhere. So one of my favorite words in Spanish is tilín. And of course, all writers love words, and words love writers. Tilín is onomatopoeia. It's the sound of a bell, el sonido de una campanilla. You can say something, "I'll be back," en un tilín. That just sounds good, doesn't it? En un tilín. Tilín, tilán. That's what I'm going to call my poetry reading here this morning. Now, Joseph Brodsky, and you must read and read all over the place, a Russian poet, in the Paris Review interview said, "The search back into the roots of our common life is an archetypal journey. We have to go back and reconstruct the foundation myths so they will live again. Poetry is tied to memory." For example, I remember going to see my abuelito Esmerigildo. The house would be dark. My father would take me there, and my grandfather, my abuelito, would say, "¿Quién es? Who is it?" And my dad would say, "It's Jesse. Apa, it's your nieto, your grandson, Jesse." And he would say, "Oh." For my grandfather Esmerigildo, a jardinero with 5 syllables in his name. He lies in bed, suffering from dementia. Like an ancient whisper, his lips thirst for an aphorism, un dicho, wisdom. Esmerigildo. Abuelito, where did your green thumb go? Sleep al fin tiptoes in. Abuelito's room becomes a hibiscus in bloom. Jacinto. Where is Jacinto? Jacinto, mijito, sleeps in el jardín. Cintilín, cintilán. Everything rhymes in el jardín, where a red rake and a wheelbarrow wait. I like the word jardín. You should make a list of your favorite words, or maybe a list of not your favorite words, and do a contrasting paragraphs. I like the word jardín. Here's another one I have in my journal. It's 12 o'clock. Los frijoles froth in the clay pot from Guadalajara. El idiota sleeps in his canvas cot. A love-sick Mexican maid picks cilantro in chili piquin. En el jardín, listening to Agustin Lara sing songs of unrequited love. Put words in your poems that you want to celebrate. I wrote a poem, Tu la tortilla, and I wrote it because I always wanted to use the word mystical. And I did. I thought that the touch of the human hand adds something mystical to la tortilla. And there it was. Palacio, Texas. I'm not born yet when father's fate at the wheel of a 32 Ford is to decide to pass a freight truck, a brown express, on the blind side. Dr. Dunlop decides not to amputate at the elbow, but his left arm forever remains rigid. Unable to lift much, father washes dishes in a cafe owned by the Greek Gustis Melis, who eventually allows father to make sandwiches for oil-field roughnecks. The Greek invites dad to go with him to open up a cafe in Palacios, Texas, booming with young World War II recruits from an army tent camp. So off they go. I'm not born yet when mother, taken in by relatives on the west side of San Antonio, gives in to the illusion of blinking stars, floating clouds at the majestic theater, passing her orphan hours, falling in love with the leading man, Tyrone Power, and his dark looks, his widow's peak. When her older sister, Juana, hears of the army camp, they too go seek their fortune in Palacios, a small fishing town by the Gulf Coast. I'm not born yet when a fry cook and a waitress met, when they whispered like lovers do on a silent silver screen. I wish I could read that script. Poetry is all around us. In January, El Popo erupted in Mexico City. Try saying Popocatépetl. That's what we say, El Popo. And some even call him just El Goyo, con cariño. I mean, if you have a volcano in your backyard, you better treat it with cariño, right? All right. So, a litany. You should try writing a litany. A litany is just a list. Lists are wonderful. Just make a list. Repeat the first word. You can't go wrong. Here is my childhood litany. I remember dangling from my mother's hand as she carried my brother Raúl. I remember jumping off the roof pretending I was Superman and landing on a board with a protruding nail. I remember mother sending my brother, freaking him out when she told him, under the house, get under the house, go get cobwebs. For my bleeding foot, we didn't have any gauze. I remember, oh yes, I remember refusing to let my brother play with a plastic facsimile of a 1950 Cadillac, a little car. We were playing in the dirt. I remember my brother picking up an empty tomato sauce can, the jagged lid cutting my head. I still carry, I think it's over here, my scar. Write about a scar. We all have scars. Visible, invisible. And dreams. Write about your dreams or make them up. I think I made this up. In a dream, I'm in my crib on the second floor above a coffee shop. The room is unfurnished, green and gray peeling paint. The front door opens. Mama! I grip the crib railing. Mother walks in to see if I'm wet. She's a waitress with a slim waist. Father is a fry cook. I have not seen much yet. She picks me up. I recognize her breath. She's wearing a waitress dress. I guess she had to memorize her orders, because later on I learned that she was illiterate. Instead of signing her name, she wrote an X. Or maybe she just worked the counter. When I saw Joan Crawford in her classy waitress outfit in her 1945 movie Mildred Pierce, I thought about Mom. In my dream, she kisses me, puts me back into the crib, and leaves. I somehow crawl out of the crib, hit my head on the door. I lie on the floor. The dream is a blur after that. Now, if I recite a poem about my mom, I always make it a point to recite a poem, or maybe just 2 lines about my dad, so he doesn't get jealous. May they rest in peace, Mom and Dad. We all stand on the shoulders of giants, and I'm here today because of them. Father does not play the fiddle, but he could flip pancakes on the griddle. And he could, and I ate them all, too. Now, did you have an imaginary friend? I always thought that was kind of weird. I never had one, but I would see, on TV, some kid have an imaginary friend, and a cookie for my friend. Right? I never had one, but maybe I did. Macario. Macario. Say Macario. Come on, say Macario. Isn't that a beautiful name? Macario. I meant Macario by the monkey bars. I was pretending to be a trapeze artiste when El Bule knocks me down, accusing me of insulting his name, something about lobotomy. I was well read, but I thought I was dead. I knew he was bent on beating el chocolate out of me, man. Macario appeared in a flurry of uppercuts. El Bule walks away in a nosebleed. Macario caressing his knuckles, and I sat on a broken merry-go-round, going nowhere. I don't remember if he said anything. I wonder if Macario was my imaginary friend. Now, I'm sure you've made something for Mother's Day or Father's Day. I made this for my mom. Maple leaf. In a woodworking class, I am introduced to the hand jig saw and how to use a vice grip. For my first project, I decided to jig saw a small wall shelf in the shape of a maple leaf. What possessed me to do that? I do not know. You ever seen a maple leaf? I had not thought about how much zigzag I would have to do with my zig saw. Not very mechanical. I soon bent too many blades. The teacher was very patient. Maybe he kept an extra pack of blades just for me. After much sanding and varnishing, I finished my project just in time for Mother's Day. A small wall shelf in the shape of a maple leaf for Mom to display some of her favorite knick-knacks. I always love that word, knick-knacks. Now, if you grew up speaking Spanish and English, you probably know the word atole. Sometimes not having something can lead to poetry. I didn't grow up with central heat. We had a space heater. Now, those can be dangerous. Every year they warn you against the space heaters. But my dad was very good about turning it off every night. I liked the space heater because it had flames. And when you're a kid, you like flames. You're a pyromaniac. Wrapped in a wool blanket with my Uncle Joe's army overcoat from the Korean War on top of me, I wake up like a mummy. Afraid I'll catch pneumonia, I warm up my bare feet by the dear-born space heater, staring at the hissing jets, thin blue flames. It's then I get the idea to warm up my school shoes by placing them on top of the heater. As I sat in the kitchen table, eating a bowl of Quaker oats, my all-American atole, I smelled something burning. Híjole, my zapatos, man. It was too late. The toe caps had curled up from the heat. Walking around, I felt like a genie wearing pointy shoes. Now, you also meet incredible people in your life. I met Celestino. Celestino. I'll never forget Celestino. What a poetic name. El que quiere celeste, que le cueste. No pain, no gain. Gotta break some eggs to make an omelet. Celestino. Celestino lived alone in a shack with Pepsi-Cola signs for a rooftop. People, decent, said that he would climb a mesquite tree to watch falling stars, eating ripe mesquite pods, rocking back and forth, having a good time. He was a free soul, Celestino. One morning I'm chopping weeds, punishment, in a vacant lot when he came down my street munching on a donut, swinging a gasoline can, his leather boots unlaced, his high-water pants flapping against his white socks. His face reminded me of Charlie Chan. He was a famous Asian detective in the 1930s and 40s. Celestino was called El Solitario del Barrio. Some people, decent, said he was divino. I don't know if he's alive. I think about him when a cold October wind passes through a belfry where one or more bells ring, scintillin, scintillan. Now, if you are just starting to write, or even if you write a lot, try writing a series of couplets. They're like aphorisms, the little sayings. Now, they can rhyme, don't rhyme, they can make a point and make a point, they can be just crazy things you say. And then rearrange them, rearrange the order. Here are some of mine. I was all alone when I read about Tizoc, the Aztec sacrificial stone. A phantasma hides in my plasma. So much violence, what's a Loch Ness to do? A man wearing earphones tells me the Pope is saying he's not in Rome. I hit the dance floor looking for a metaphor. I wore a white sport coat, but skipped the pink carnation. When my mother got depressed, and it happened a lot, she got a permanent wave at the beauty shop. After my first heartache, I went home and turned into a blue robe. I'm a man who lives beyond his means. Serve me a bowl of borracho beans. I knew I would get you with that one, bunch of borracho beans. In a dream, I am a street sweeper. In a balcony, a young girl weeps. writes in her journal, love is for keeps. I hope that some of these writings have inspired you. I will conclude with one last one here. This is called mascots. You know, your pet, if you have a pet, right, a bird or a cat, in Spanish, what's the word for a pet? Mascota. Mascota. That's where we get the word mascots from, right? Now, at William Adams High School, our mascot is the coyote. Cheerleaders, they didn't speak any Spanish, would chant, "Go, yotes, go." I said, great. I would say, "Go coyotes, go coyotes." And they would go, "Go, chants, go." Oh, man. Living close to the outskirts of town, sleeping by my open window, I often heard the yip yip of my mascot, los coyotes, excited over something to eat. Out in the brush country, los coyotes, the real coyotes, had a bad rap, almost diabolic. To the ranchers, the only good coyote is a dead coyote. Eventually, I enrolled at Texas A&I College in Kingsville, Texas. My mascot was now las javelinas, pig-like mammals romping through the South Texas thicket, eating prickly pear cactus, marking their territory with their musk-smelling rumps. I just love that. I gotta say it again. Marking their territory with their musk-smelling rumps. Look it up. That's what I did in encyclopedia. The college cheerleaders chanted, "Go, Hogs, go! Go, Hogs, go!" So I had gone from a 3-syllable mascot, coyote, to a 4-syllable mascot, javelina. I don't know if I moved up by becoming a javelina. Thank you so much. You're wonderful.
Virtuoso talent. It's just good. So thank you very much, Jacinto, for your 5th appearance in Mega Corazon. Yeah, it's already five times you've come. And for those of you out there, email us, events@urban15.org, with your comments. We're getting great little messages and phone calls already from people throughout the United States saying how much they've enjoyed today. And so the more feedback we get from you, the more we can make this an amazing show every year. So speaking of amazing, we have the amazing Naomi coming on here in a moment. She's a poet, worldwide known. And what more can I say except please come on and start.
Good morning, everybody. Well, I've been here too. I've been listening from the back rooms, and I've loved all the readings. Thank you, Moby. Thank you, Dawn. Thank you, Jesse. Thank you. I don't know if they're still here, Carmen and Henices. I met them in the stairwell.
They're in the kitchen.
Talked to them. Beautiful readings. Okay, so I'm going to read you all of these books. April Fool! April Fool! I love URBAN-15. I love George and Kat Cisneros. They're two of my husbands and my personal heroes of San Antonio. Thank you for everything you do for us. Sitting in this auditorium is always one of the happiest times of any time. Just coming over here puts you in a good mood. So thank you all for being here today. And thank you, George and Kat, for doing Mega Corazón. This really helps us, I don't know, feel connected to the world out there, the streaming world, the community world. You get to hear your friends whose voices you've loved for so long, and you get to hear new people, and you get to feel like there's a long necklace of voices everywhere, that we're all strung together. We're not separated. None of us are separated. And this event underscores that. So thank you for doing it. It's hard to organize, and I really appreciate organizers. So I live right down the street, and our grandson spends a lot of time with us these days. His name is Connor, and he's 3, and I'm going to read you 2 of his spoken poems first, because I think we are all poets when we're little kids. And as one of my favorite poets, William Stafford, used to say, some of us just try to keep up the habit. We try to use language in interesting ways. We fall in love with words. We say them over and over. So Connor is in love with via buses, and he stands in our front window and stares out and watches the buses go by. And he especially loves 11A and 11B, the turquoise bus that goes up Broadway, goes through downtown, and takes you to the museums. He calls it my own bus. My bus was going by, and it didn't even look at me. It just left me here. I think that poem says something for me about why I thought about poetry differently than other language. When I was little myself, I started writing poems when I was 6, started sending them to magazines when I was 7, but I had the feeling there was so much to notice in the world, and somehow poetry would give us a way to notice, a place to put our thoughts, our impressions, our observations. If you wrote things down, you would stay in better touch with your own life. And so another day, Connor heard me be a little bit fussy to his father, my son, and I was saying, why are you always late? 30 minutes late as usual, or something like that. And after my son left, Connor said to me, now picture him, he's this tall, be nice to my dada. Be nice to my dada. If you are not nice to my dada, you should not have a mouth. Now, this is my notebook in which I write little things down every day, but nothing I have written in this notebook since I started keeping this one is as good as those 2 things Connor said. Nothing. He is my mentor at the moment. So this is the best gift you can all give yourselves, is getting in the habit of keeping a notebook. You will never be sorry. Just write down 3 little things a day that you noticed or thought or wondered, 3 questions you're asking. You don't have to show it to anybody. Your lines don't have to be brilliant. You don't have to have a big idea. Sometimes you don't even have to have a little idea. You just have to say something that comes to you. I've always loved Jesse's poem about the avocado. And it always makes me think of you, Jesse, when I eat an avocado, one of my favorite foods. And just think, start anywhere. Start with something that is part of your life at that meal, on that day. You'll always have places to begin. So, quick poems, I'm really just reading like one thing from each of these books. So, my father was a newspaper journalist. He worked for the San Antonio Express News for 8 years, and then went on to Dallas and worked for the Dallas Morning News. But when we were little kids, and I lived in Ferguson, Missouri then, a place you might have heard of, and then would go on to live in Jerusalem, not in the United States Jerusalem, but overseas Jerusalem, where my father was from. He was Palestinian. He worked for newspapers in those places too, and he would always tell us to read newspaper stories with questioning and care and curiosity. Like, is this the whole story? Whose voice wasn't quoted in this story? How else might someone describe this? Is there pain about this story that the story is not telling us? He also urged me as a child to look for grammatical errors in the newspaper and cut them out if I found any, because then he would take them to work and fuss at the copy editors. And I used to think, does everybody read newspapers like this? Anyway, this starts with quotes from a newspaper. There are 2 quotes in this poem from newspapers. The poem is called Feeling Wise. I still cut out newspaper stories and headlines to this day. A lady was quoted in a newspaper. It is not so hard to feel wise. Just think of something dumb you could say, then don't say it. I like her. I would take her gingerbread or an avocado if I knew where her house was. Julia Child, the famous chef, said, "I never feel lonely in the kitchen. Food is very friendly. Just looking at a potato, I like to pat it. Staring down, you feel tall. Staring into someone else's eyes, you're not alone. Staring out the window during school, you become the future, smooth and large." Oh, thank you. And do any of you, thank you, you're so sweet. Do any of you ever feel like you just have too much to do? This is for you. Sometimes I pretend I'm not me. I only work for me. This feels like a secret motor churring inside my pocket. I think, she will be so glad when she sees the homework neatly written. She will be relieved someone sharpened pencils, folded clothes. And thank you. You are a very, very lovely audience. So do any of you have, I can kind of see your hands if I squint. Is there anyone in your family who doesn't talk to anyone else in your family? This is a pretty common thing in the world. Well, you all seem to have very warm and friendly families, fewer people than usual. But in my family, on both sides of my family, there have always been people who, for various periods of time, didn't speak to other people. And so I think sometimes it's kind of interesting when you're working in the world of words and you really believe in communication that you can't even solve these things in your own family. You can't fix it. You can try, see what happens next. Communication skills. I am working on speaking to the ones who haven't spoken to us in years. The ones swinging punches out of nowhere. The ones who decided to shun us for reasons unknown. Who wouldn't greet our group at the family reunion, but sat across the swimming pool looking wounded. The strength of strangers will help us survive. Strangers are so generous. They don't know our faults, our flaws, so they hope for the best, muttering, "Good morning," when you pass at the bridge. The consolation of strangers is endless and forgiving. But it takes all our courage with close ones sometimes. Families, neighbors, best friends. Even if we believe in world peace, they may find reasons to dislike us. I think of Gandhi, who said he might never have become an activist for nonviolence if the neighbor boys had not beaten him up. And this is kind of just a, oh, you're sweet. You don't have to clap, thank you. This is kind of a weird poem. I wanted to read something I've never read out loud to anyone anywhere. And I kind of like this morning. I don't know. It's called Girls, Girls. I think because I just had some really, really helpful house guests. And I was feeling so lucky to have people like running around doing all these chores in the house, like folding your laundry when it's in the dryer. That's rare to me. Girls, Girls. And I have also, by the way, somehow always lived in houses with boys. Never any sisters, never girls living there, so. When the boys are alone, they wash the dishes with face cloths. When a honeybee is alone, rare, very rare, it tastes the sweetness it lives inside all the time. What pollen are we gathering? Bees take naps too. Maybe honeybees taste pollen side by side, pretending they're alone. Maybe the concept alone means nothing in a hive. A bumblebee is not a honeybee. It only pretends to be. The cell phone in your pocket buzzes against your leg. It's not a honeybee, though. It's just a mining bee or leaf cutter or carpenter. You're stung by messages from people far away. You can't make anyone well. You can't stop a war. What good are you? Bees drink from thousands of flowers, spitting up nectar so you may have honey in your tea. Maybe you don't want to think about it so much. Pass the honey, please. During winter, bees lock legs and beat wings fast to stay warm. 50,000 bees can live in a single hive. Clover honey is most popular, and clover is a weed. All the worker bees are female. Why is that no surprise? Thank you. And okay, here's a couple of poems from my newest book, Tiny Journalist, which the Tiny Journalist is a very young girl. She might be 12 or 13 by now. I started hearing about her when she was 6 and 7, and she lives in Palestine, in the West Bank, in a very conflicted area that is ruled by a lot of soldiers with a lot of weapons, a lot of very big guns and tanks and all kinds of nasty things. And when Jana Ayad was 6 years old, she looked around her, and by the way, this is a village where she lives, Nebi Salah, which is very close to the village where my grandmother lived and my family, so I know the area very well. She decided there weren't enough journalists there taking notes on what was happening to the people of her area. Her humble family, one of her cousins became very famous last year, Ahed Tamimi, who was dragged off to prison at the age of 16 because she slapped a soldier who had shot her cousin in the head. And I think most of us might slap someone who shot our cousin in our presence, so I don't think Ahed's crime was so regrettable. But anyway, Ahed kind of became a world-known headline figure. Palestinian people have lived under a lot of horror for the last 70 years. So Jana decided to use her mother's cell phone that took pictures when she's 6 years old to document what's going on. And she joined Facebook, and anybody can follow her videos and see what she posts. So her name is Jana Ayad, A-Y-Y-A-D. And she's been doing that ever since. I consider her a young hero. So this book is inspired by her, but I just want to read a couple of poems from here. Jana, at 7, making videos. At 10, raising the truth flag. At 11, raising it higher, traveling to South Africa, keffiyeh knotted on shoulders, interviews in airports. Please, could you tell us? You know, gazing into a camera can be a bridge, so you stare without blinking. Some people drift to the sides of the film, don't want to be noticed, put on the spot. You know, the spot is the only thing that matters. What else? Long days, tired trousers pinned on roof lines, nothing good expected. So here I'm imagining her voice. It's right in front of me. I didn't go looking for it. We're living in the middle of trouble. No reason not to say it straight. They do not consider us equal. They blame us for everything, forgetting what they took, how they took it. We are made of bone and flesh and story, but they poke their big guns into our faces and our front doors and our living rooms as if we are vapor. Why can't they see how beautiful we are? The saddest part, we all could have had twice as many friends. Thank you. Thank you. My father always urged me to remember that Jewish people and Arab people were not destined to be enemies. They were brothers and sisters. But a lot of power and greed and money and disrespect for other people's simple needs had caused this tragedy to happen. So when we hear in our country about people making decisions about what happens to Israelis and Palestinians, it just seems really strange. No explosions. To enjoy fireworks. you would have to have lived a different kind of life. And just two more from here. This is something I was told last year when I went to visit a school in Louisiana, and I called the poem Freedom of Speech. But then in parentheses it says, what the head of school told me. And he said this outside the auditorium before I went in to do my first poetry reading of the day, and then I was going to be visiting classes with the students all day. We would appreciate if you would not, in this strange climate, taking all into account, problems we have had, misunderstandings, angry parents, insults, Facebook postings, teachers being fired, demonstrations, floods, mention the president. Thank you. And this is my last poem. This is for all of you. And one thing, I know everybody's writing these days because you write emails and texts, right? So it's like you're writing little poems night and day to anybody you have to meet, to your friends. These are little poems. And sometimes you can make them more like poems just by kind of turning your head a little bit, thinking about it differently. Sometimes I try the experiment of answering emails I get, even from people I don't know personally, in a way that seems more like a poem than just a dry little message. I even write it like in that more vertical fashion, like breaking the lines. I like doing those emails, and I feel like you can get your work done at the same time. So I think somehow poems can sneak into our days in more ways than we may imagine. You don't have to go off to a coffee shop and have a full hour to write poems in. Just answer an email to your friend in a way that feels like a poem. Tell them something beautiful you saw that day that you want to share with them. Quote something you heard. So that's how this poem came to be. It was from a girl in Massachusetts. I didn't really know her, but we'd met in her school. And it's after I left the school. So only the first 3 lines of the poem come from her and her email. But then the rest of the poem I just wrote, and most of it I wrote her back. It's called To Manage, and this is from a book called Voices in the Air, Poems for Listeners, which came out last year, and thank you all for being such generous listeners. We're really lucky as human beings. We have a lot to listen to. In San Antonio, the birds alone could keep you going. To manage. She writes to me, I can't sleep because I'm 17. Sometimes I lie awake thinking, I didn't even clean my room yet, and soon I will be 25 and a failure. And when I am 50, I write her back. Slowly, slow. Clean one drawer. Arrange words on a page. Let them find one another. Find you. Trust they might know something. You aren't living the whole thing at once. That's what a minute said to an hour. Without me, you are nothing. Thank you.
I still can do that.
Okay.
There's a stack of these out there. This is the National Poetry Month calendar. Into the mic. This is the National Poetry Month calendar. On Saturday night, I mentioned to people that I was on my 5th National Poetry Month activity, and it was not even April yet, so there are over 100 things. Come to as many as you can. One of the things, high school folks, there's a stack of these as well, we do a teen writing workshop. It's an open workshop. People write song, rap, poems, short stories, whatever, at the Bazan Library on the 3rd Saturday of every month. And for National Poetry Month on April 20th, in addition to the workshop, the Via Poetry on the Move bus will be there, and my students from the Young Women's Leadership Academy will be reading. And I'm sure if you want to challenge them to a read-off, that could happen too. George, Kat, thank you for all you do. Thank you for this venue. Thank you for your commitment. This is quite remarkable, and I think part of what it shows is the range of commitment, the varied voices, the incredible richness that there is here. It's easy to do National Poetry Month in San Antonio because of all of that incredible richness. And we're counting on all of you guys to continue. We're not going to be here forever. Well, maybe. Yes, Naomi, I'm going to read from all of these books. If you've heard me read ever, you know that I begin every reading I do with at least one poem by one of my students from the Choir Juvenile Detention Center. I teach there each fall, and I read you their voices. I want you to hear their voices because they can't read to you. And that's a great tragedy. So here are a few short poems by Demorius, D-E', from the Book of Disappointments. This is someone who 6 weeks into a 16-week residency with them, I had not had a word from. And then he hits me with this. I got a poem. It just came to me. But it blew away like a paper on the beach. It came from the waves. I looked at Demorius and I said, "You've been holding out on me." So in the next few weeks, I also got, when I sleep, I see faces. When I'm awake, I hear lies. Darkness in the sky. Everybody in disguise. And 2 weeks later, he would try to give me at least a couple of weeks with no words so that I would begin to doubt him again. Lonely nights in my dorm, facing all four walls. Memory keeps me alive. Is this home or hell? You help me decide. Demorius. So each year in the book that we produce, the program is run by through the Writers and Communities program at Gemini Inc. And we also, the two of us who teach there, have a poem of ours. And this is my poem for my kids. It's called Their Hairs. How many of you know Sandra Cisneros' house on Mongo Street? Good. You know the chapter, hairs, pelitos, describing, yes, well, this is their hairs. Ruby's hair escapes the clip and slips over the sides of her face in twin arcs. Dez's hair, head tilted to attend to Ruby, is piled and thick, a great bear's matted fur. Kaya's broccoli top pulled, cornrows leading upward, tight, lifts her face. It is the dew of aspiration, the hair of hope. Isaiah's hair, shaved at the sides and atop every which way, tight every which way, ends mini dreads, all seeking a bunch or more of decisions. While Cain's hair, straight cut, a clean line, not a bowl or a monk cut, but severe, all falls from the center. Demorius's hair is a tangled forest, fulsome, wondrous, lost in it, the words which only sometimes tumble out. It is the hair of someone with an apostrophe in his name. Alexis's hair straggles out, colors change, she hides in it, but then fireworks burst at the sides of her head. Ethan, gone to the free, so his hair is a memory, close cropped, a helmet for battles ahead. Mine, the only silver mine. And Miller, the guard, she is here too, pulled back from her forehead, not tightly, not severe, but leaves the unfurrowed plane of her forehead on which to draw delight, despair, or even boredom. My guys. So, let me be political for a moment. We've had reports of no something recently. No morality, was it? Something like that. This is a poem called No. Black and blue and swelling too, but no contusion. Fenders smashed, the airbag inflated, but no collision. Pages fluttering across the room like birds, no collation. Never admit, never address, so there's no contrition. Streets alive with protest marchers, but no commotion. A shot in the back while standing still, no motion. Soon the continents of trash will overtake it, and there will be no ocean. We are so lucky in this city. When I moved to San Antonio 25 years ago, some of the first people I met were George and Kat, because their studios at the time were across the street from the Children's Museum on Houston Street, where I was the first director. And we talked and met and knew one another. I slowly learned that we were a city which had great mothers of poetry. Naomi Nye and Rosemary Katakalos and Carmen Tafoya and Sandra Cisneros. We were incredibly lucky. So, and we had 2 poetry printing small presses, neither of which exist anymore, sadly. This is West. It's my newest book. I moved out to the country 15 years ago. So, city guy, but how many of you end up seeing those black trash bags full of somebody else's trash just tossed on streets near you? Just tossed, right? Out in the country, we see it a lot. They also toss stray dogs, stray cats they don't want. This is called Dumping. It's the most political poem in the book. The book is mostly about living in the country. Dumping. I'm looking for reasons on a high country road and finding garbage. A good view of farms, fields, and their many cows, trees and power lines, caracaras, cactus, clouds, and distance. So why would anyone come here to dump their trash? Dumping is what the people from the city think of the country. Dumping is what the North Side thinks of the South Side. Dumping is what the rich think of the poor. And saddest of all, it is what the country, the South Side, the poor sometimes think of themselves. Black trash bags splitting open after they're heaved from SUVs, tires, furniture sagging, carpet rolled and bent against the fence like a long cowboy lazing in the grass. Dead things. Down a slope, a high water crossing, cows precarious on the creek's edge, tiptoeing for water. How does this slip from idle into trash heap? Dumping may just be a shrug, garbage tossed, speeding by. A landscape they don't even see. So I'm going to suggest something to you all today, being April 1st, the first day of National Poetry Month. One of the things I do each April 1 to usher in the month is something called Slam the Town. And what I do is I email everybody on my mailing list a poem with the suggestion that they send a poem of theirs or a poem they love to everyone they know. I also have been known to walk through parking lots and put them under people's windshields and slip them under doors in dorms like Chinese restaurant menus. I thoroughly encourage the paper airplane poem and the origami poem. It's up to you. My friend Jack Riddle in northern Michigan started this. He worked on a college campus, and they would paper the college campus with poems. If you are using someone else's poem, please acknowledge where it came from and the book and the author and the book, so that in this age of lack of literacy, people might consider buying a book of poems. This was my Slam the Town poem for 2019. It's called Questioning the Muse. And it mentions a gamelan. Gamelan is an Indonesian music gong orchestra played by about 10 people. And the music is meant to be listened to be playing as you walk into the auditorium and to be playing as you leave, so it never stops. It's about the fact that, as Naomi says, we're poets young, and that music is there all the time, and we just don't always listen for it. Questioning the Muse. If Like the music of the gamelan, we are meant to hear as we enter and as we leave. If the music is meant to continue outside us, before and after, and if you cannot step into the same river twice, then what is it we seek to capture and what let go? Why is there a hole in our net? How close can it get? How long before it is gone, seeped out like slow dawn, fog burn off? If, as I know, I have at times mistaken flaw for flow and followed it out, let the words spill, spread, sink or stain in early spring's feathery green. The mesquites I sometimes claim as mine are staking their own claim. You want to give me when it's time for me to be done? Not a literal one. I don't need a knife, thanks. But how many of you all know who Manny Castillo was? Sad, difficult. Manny Castillo ran San Anto Cultural Arts. Manny Castillo worked with groups of students and artists to do many of the murals on the west side. San Anto Cultural Arts still exists today. They run a magazine called El Placaso, which publishes the work of high school students. You need to know at least San Anto. Manny Castillo died very much too young. Went to his funeral at the little church behind the Guadalupe Center. It was an Aztec funeral, so there were people poised at all four corners of his casket. There were gifts brought. There was music. It was you were there, George. We shared that. This is called Some Things to Do in the Face of Death for Manny Castillo. And it begins with a quote from Marge Piercy, a poem called To Be of Use. The pitcher cries for water to carry, and a person for work that is real. Paint the casket, stare back, bring gifts, don't mourn, organize, do the right thing, stand at the four corners, watchful, do what the moment suggests, facing an eternity of moments. Drum, do what needs to be done, do more, play the sax, embrace, follow the example of the exemplary life, laugh, cry, sing, gather light, remember but do not lock away as past, rededicate, make food, make art, make peace, make love, continue the work. I have 1 minute. I was going to say, one of the things we talk about as poets is observation and close watching and being in touch with your senses. But I also want you to know that sometimes it is useful to write about what there is at the corner of your eye. Close watching is hard for all of us. We get headaches. We watch too many screens. It's a little poem, a group of little poems called Some Insects. 1. The dragonfly I see on the screen, bathroom window, through raindrops, steam and screening, almost translucent, could be a shadow. 2. After I write a poem to try to stop killing the butterflies that smash into the windshield by the hundreds, we arrive at Ward and Jeannie's, and I find a dragonfly dead in the grill and iridescent blue and beautiful. Is one death more important than another? Can any poem save them? 3. The exterminator places canisters around the outside of our house. Terminals. They think it's food, he says. They are drawn to it, and they die. 4. Cicadas' husks stick to screen and stairways, hollow. Not the part that clicks or sings, but maybe the part that simplifies. 5. The stick bug is so fully articulated and so camouflaged. I think I get it. Doesn't need a poem. Speaks for itself. Thanks. Thank you, George. Thank you, Kat.
How y'all doing? It's almost over. That's what I would be thinking now. I was like, yes, just that ugly dude on stage and we're done. I'm very happy to be here at Urban-15. Welcome, you guys, and welcome Planet Earth. I think we're being live streamed throughout the planet. If people are in Japan tuning in, then we're out there. It's a great way to start off National Poetry Month here in San Antonio, and I'm very honored to be here with you guys. I am Anthony the Poet. I'm Anthony Flores. I'm a 3-time San Antonio Grand Slam poetry champion. I've represented this city at the National Poetry Slam on many occasions. I've recorded for HBO's Def Poetry. I've performed at the Lincoln Center in New York City, and just finished my 7th year of serving as a judge for the San Antonio Public Library's Young Pegasus Poetry Contest. So I've been, oh, thank you. I work with a lot of kids, so some of the stuff you hear today might be wacky and weird because kids influence me a lot. So let's see how that goes. But I'll start off with a piece that I recently dusted off for another event last Thursday. Let's see if I remember it, and if I don't, well, I have some books. Many years ago, when I first started working with youth in this city, which is about 20 years ago, I ran into this awesome kid at a middle school, I think it was, who refused to write when everybody else was writing. And when I asked her at some point, she said, we were writing about ourselves, when she said, why should I write about myself when everybody already tells me who I should be? My parents, my teachers, the TV. I thought it was an awesome, awesome comment. I wrote it in a notebook and didn't find it again for many, many years. And I saw the notes maybe 5, 6 years later, and it became this piece. So I hope you enjoy it. It is called A Clean Sheet of Paper. I want a clean sheet of paper. This one's got the blood of history on it. This one's been crumpled up by an angry hand, and even when I try to press it flat upon my desk, it's still got all those creases permanently etched into its wings, and that can't be good for flying. I want a piece of paper that can fly. If I can muster up the wind to make it fly, if I can breathe a little altitude into its depths, tie it to my soul by a string and let it beat and pop against the sky. I want a clean sheet of paper. This one's already been used. I don't mind recycled, but I just can't tolerate regurgitated pulp. How am I supposed to turn it into a bird and make it sing if there's already pigeon poop all over it? Excuse me, but this one already says who I'm supposed to be, teacher. I thought you were supposed to teach me I could be anything I was willing to work my butt off for, teacher. I'll be here every day, but I want every day to be a clean sheet of paper. I'll dust off the shadows of the past myself like I was beating two erasers, and I'll meet you at the blackboard. I'll meet you at your desk. I'll meet you in the middle of any book you dare to open up before my eyes. I know there's light inside the darkness of that spine, and I want to set the world on fire, not so much as an arsonist, but as a lyrical pyromaniac. This is not a game of limbo, teachers, so don't bring along any low expectations of me. I'm liable to crush them underneath my shoes and utilize the backside of your underestimations as another piece of paper I can use. I want to gargle and swish the ink around my brain and spit out my own stain. I want a surface that's ready and willing to believe anything I have the power in me to make it believe. And trust me, I can convince a sheet of paper that it's still a tree, make it sprout new leaves in the warm springtime of my breath. Just let me have it. Just let me get the fingers of my mind on it, and I'll twist it with my tongue into a complicated piece of verbal origami. Here's a poem that's a boat you can use to sail the stars. Here's a little swan who never sings its final song. And this poem is an acrobat who trusts eternally in the invisible hand of love to always catch it when it falls. Don't let me hit the ground, teacher. Sometimes the best way to open up to other people's stories is to be allowed to write your own. All I'm asking for is that clean sheet of paper. I want to gargle and swish the ink around my brain and spit out my own stain, because every hour of our living dares us to leave a mark. Thank you all very much. I didn't forget it. I was supposed to move this stuff out of the way, but I forgot. I still get nervous. Just to catch my breath real quick, just want to let you guys know some very important things about me. When people ask me what kind of a Native American I am, I tell them that I belong to the Menudo para la Cruda tribe. They believe it. When people ask me that if I had a choice what kind of a dinosaur I would be, I tell them that I would be a Barbacoasaurus Rex. And when people ask me how I maintain this fine, svelte figure, I tell them that it's because poets feed directly off of sunlight through a process called photosynthesis. I stole that last line off of my son. He's 9, but I steal all his stuff. All right, we're gonna keep things fun. It is National Poetry Month. If you guys are interested, I'm hosting this huge, huge event at the Mission Marquee Plaza this Saturday, and there's a haiku contest available, open to people of all ages. Winner gets $200. Let me know. Come hang out. It's food haiku. I got to perform at the at the big inaugural taco music fest last year at La Villita, and I was very happy to have that they had a poet on stage with a whole bunch of bands, so I wrote some taco poems. Not that I didn't write them before, because I love them. And I'm going to read one for you guys. All right, this is about tacos. As long as it's tender, pero not too aguada, I will probably order the tacos de carne guisada. There are mornings when I will pray on my hands and knees for bean and cheese and actually weep as I beg for dos de bacon and egg. When I was a kid, all my dad would ever get us was papas con huevo, until we finally protested, por favor, jefe, queremos algo nuevo. Sometimes it's los chiquitos de las taco trucks que yo canto, looking so holy that they seem like they were dropped like flowers from la Virgen de Guadalupe, Santo Manto, sprinkled on top with onions, limón, y un poquito de cilantro. And I still get confused when they make me choose between al pastor and carne asada. Les quiero decir, give me both o no me de nada. Es muy sencillo. I'll do picadillo if I have to, it's fine. But unlike my tío, I don't want any little pieces of potato in mine. In honor of my grandmother's favorite y por todo lo que hizo, sometimes I will order tacos de frijoles con chorizo. At times, what I most want is to find a little hole-in-the-wall restaurant with tacos de chicharrones con chile tan picosos que te hacen llorar y sudar even though they're so deliciosos. Once a year, my vegetarian friends, who instead of meat would rather eat flowers and tree bark and even zacate, convinced me to try a taco made of fresh tomate con aguacate. For truly special occasions, just like Mick Jagger, I have a feathery pink boa that I use to wipe my cheeks as the grease drips down my face when I bite into my tacos de barbacoa. And I don't mean to cause any controversial chispas with these poetic pipas, but I love a handmade flour tortilla filled with curly, crispy tripas. I didn't know this as a child, but I know it now. They are definitely the smelly but super tasty entrails of a cow. There's nothing that really rhymes with lengua, but I have no problem in saying, as this story is sung, I will walk into any congalito or nogalitos and say, come on, people, just give me some tongue. This is Taco City, USA way, and you'll find good ones in every direction away. Tacos, tacos, all kinds of tacos. The list never ends, but the best tacos of all are the ones that you share with familia and friends. Thank you very much. All right. Let's see. I think I can survive 2 more. I'm an old man. Sometimes I have trouble breathing. My son is downstairs. I homeschool him. Been doing it for 3 years. He used to be up front and center until he got bored after like 5 events. He's like, you're on your own now, Dad. He's like, I heard that one already like 30 times. I write a lot of stuff about him. He inspires me a bunch. And so I'm going to do a piece called Daddy, Daddy, Daddy. Daddy, daddy, daddy is all I hear 1,000 times a day ringing in my ear. Give me this, make me that, hit this ball with that bat, play with me, stay with me. I'm busy, Dad, go away from me. Yes, daddy, 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 to the point it drives me batty. A string of questions in an endless loop until my face grows numb and my eyes begin to droop. Want to throw around this greenish goop? Can I have another quesadilla and maybe one more ice cream scoop? And daddy, 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 what now, my son? I say, barely jumping through yet another mental hoop. And he responds, I think that now I have to take a poop. Oh, daddy, daddy, daddy is all I hear 1,000 times a day ringing in my ear. May I take this pen from you? It doesn't matter, you've got work to do. I've just made up a brand new game, and so I have some special plans for you. Can you put this cape on, please? And these gloves, and these glasses, and these, and these, and these. Oh, I tell you, friends, 1,000 questions without cease. And although the chatter sometimes sounds like nothing more than noise, I do not ask for silence, even though I often feel I might lose my cool and poise. For in all the universe, there's only one such voice, and it's my boy's. There will come a time, I know, in some dreaded, distant year, when my name will not be called out with such untainted cheer, and I will yearn for him to once again be near, that I might perhaps still hear, "Daddy, Daddy, Daddy," 1,000 times a day ringing in my ear. Thank you very much. All right, I'm gonna finish off with this one. It's a ratty piece of paper collection here, but I just found it. I haven't read it in years. I hope I don't mess it up. Let's see if this one will move. Oh no, it's all right. Yeah, so I've been working with kids and youth all over the city for many years, and I will gladly come visit you guys at school. I'm at Anthony the Poet. Find me, Google me, become my friend, check out my videos, lie to me and tell me they're good. Yeah, so I often have to write with the kids, and this is what we came up with one time. I told them we were going to write about pet peeves, and we had a grand old time. Hope you enjoy it. I hope I get through this, and this will be my last piece. Thank you guys. Happy National Poetry Month. This is called Pet Peeves. It's called a pet peeve because it's supposed to be sort of fuzzy and cute. Like maybe you could take it for a walk or buy it a little furry toy mouse and put it in its stocking for Christmas. A pet peeve is supposed to be a sufferable annoyance, sort of like a teacher's pet. Pet peeves are supposed to be as harmless as exotic fish swimming in a bowl, so pretty that they subliminally hypnotize you into forgetting to feed them for 3 months, and they die, and you end up having to flush them down the toilet just because they were so darned beautiful. But you can't take pet peeves to the dog park anymore, people. Lately, it seems that pet peeves are on steroids or on some very serious illicit drugs. The New York Times ran a story just yesterday about a woman who killed her husband for leaving wet towels on the bathroom floor. In Chicago last week, a man nearly beat his girlfriend to death because she chewed her gum like that, in handcuffs, on the news. He screamed into the camera, "That really gets my goat," because when she does that, she looks like a friggin' goat, man. Well, at least she doesn't start getting dressed only 5 minutes before we're supposed to leave the house, mister. At least she doesn't eat all the food on her plate in 5 minutes flat and then start eating all the food on your plate, thus being the primary reason why you haven't gained any weight in over 3 years. At least she doesn't try to tag team talk when you're trying to have a private conversation on the telephone. "Honey, will you tell her? Would you remind her? Can you do me?" You know what I can tell her, baby? I can tell her to call you when she wants to talk to you. How's that? It's getting bad. I mean, what kind of a pet can that peeve be if you can't control that darn animal? On the west side of San Antonio, a pet peeve recently broke loose from its chain, invaded a neighbor's backyard, murdered 18 chickens, and then ate them. But maybe those chickens had it coming. Maybe they used to drink straight out of the milk carton. Maybe they used to slurp their drinks. Maybe they double dipped their chips in the salsa at a party right there in front of everybody. Maybe they used the last of the ice cubes and didn't refill the tray. Maybe some of the roosters used to leave the toilet seat up at night. Maybe they always left the lights on when they left the room, like you own the entire frigging electric company. Maybe they hogged the blankets at night. Maybe they wore so much darn cologne that you had to purchase a gas mask just to continue being their friend. Maybe they had really bad breath and always insisted on whispering secrets in your face. Maybe those chickens were always texting while you were trying to have a decent conversation with them. It's bad, I tell you. Pet peeves are being crossbred and especially trained for violence. And thus, my resolution, when pet peeves attack, it is time to call the pound and put them to sleep. They're peeing on all the furniture and messing up the apartment anyway. Or maybe I'll put them up for adoption, but only to good families with big backyards so that my pet peeves can run around. Or maybe I'll just open up all the cages and set all my pet peeves loose. I'll teach them not to bite and maybe even open up the world's first ever pet peeve petting zoo. Bring the kids. Pictures are only $1. Thank you all very much. I'm done. And you guys are done. Yay.
Wow. That's great, Anthony. Anthony, the poet flautist. Give him a big hand. Okay, we're going to proceed now with Eddie Vega, who's was a student of Carmen Tafoya, who you all heard read earlier. And he, too, teaches with Jacinto in Carnarvon High School here in San Antonio. So, Eddie Vega.
Hi, my name is Eddie Vega, and I'm a poet, I'm an educator, a lover of life, a fifth-time Mega Corazón participant, or so they tell me. It might be the second time, might be the 27th time. I'm not keeping count, but I want to thank everyone who makes this event possible, because it's an awesome time here at Mega Corazón. I'm going to read a few poems for you. I'm trying to write this poem about what it's like to be a teacher, but I'm having trouble with some of the words. Like, how do I fit, before entering school, your child needs to have their shots with, he had a shotgun. Or, my world revolves around my students with, he had a revolver. Every student wants to get an A, but I want to avoid the A in AR-15. Like, what if I find another vowel, like an E or an O, but ER and OR lead to hospitalization, which is basically the same thing. What if I replace it with a U? Then I get UR-15, but I can't say UR-15 because it's more correct to say you were 15. She was only 15. He was only 16. My daughter just turned 17. Her brother started high school this year. The year is ending school, but last year life ended at school for 10 in Texas, 17 in Florida. Last week, 2 more kids lost the battle, made casualties of themselves, and we say we should never treat students like they're just numbers. I'll be honest. I hate taking attendance every morning to see who's there, but I would loathe to take attendance in the afternoon to see who was left. It's the end of a semester, and I should be cleaning my classroom instead of assessing it. I'm trying to write a poem about these last few school days instead of sitting at school, dazed, looking at pictures of students that look just like mine, because which one of us hasn't taught a musician or a wallflower, an athlete, an exchange student, a selfie taker, a drama queen, a father's pride, a mother's joy, a Jared, a Chris, a Kimberly, a Joaquin, a Kara. We end schooling with a commencement exercise. That's to say that we're supposed to be ending with a new beginning, not beginning after another ending. My students are going to graduate in a few years, a few months. I wonder if they'll feel like they accomplished something, or if they just managed to escape in time. I wonder if they'll feel guilty when they get together to laugh, claiming, we survived high school, because they did. I'm trying to write a poem about what it's like to be a teacher while lawmakers want to make me their deputy. Give a loaded weapon to those that have trouble loading paper into the copy machine. I've been waiting for years to get technology in my classroom, but you'll give me a pistol tomorrow? I carry the burdens of my students from behind my desk. I don't need the burden of a handgun in my drawer. If you're going to arm us, give us a better weapon. like a high caliber semi-automatic cell phone that'll call a counselor, a social worker, and a parent in quick succession? How about some time to be our ammunition because our students need more than an occasional bump stock of attention? Dear lawmakers, you safeguard children from getting disease by requiring that they have their shots. You're inept at safeguarding children from getting shot. I'm educating voters. You're suppressing them. I'm listening to the next generation. You're literally letting their voices die. You're so concerned with the pass rate that when a student actually passes, it means that you failed. Suggesting that we carry weapons says to us that you think that we aren't doing enough. We're doing our part. Y'all ain't doing a thing. And it's been about a year since I wrote this poem, and not much has changed. After the next school shooting, you'll tell us that it's too soon. A dead child will tell us that it's too late. And I still won't ever want to read a poem like this again. Thank you. I write poems about what's going on in the world and what I see, and I'm affected by the news, of course. And I wrote this poem for several reasons. One, it was something that happened in the news, and also some things that just seem to keep happening that we don't care about as much, I think. The Mixteca song has become an immigrant hymn. It starts by acknowledging how far we are from the floor of our birth. Ay, que lejos estoy del suelo donde nacido. 10 days ago, Pablo left the dirt floor where he was born to collapse on the dirty floor where he would die. Shipped his cargo in a refrigerated truck that didn't cool. It became a sweat box waiting to become a coffin. 100 people in over 100-degree heat took turns breathing through a hole the size of a mother's broken heart. The difference between a dream and a hallucination is 15 degrees of latitude and 30 degrees of heat. Crossing the border, they found that the American dream was really just an illusion, a side effect, the brain's reaction to a lack of oxygen, and I wonder what Pablo imagined. Sending money back to his mother, feeding his little sisters, finally being able to provide something besides worry? Did you imagine that Pablo could walk into an employment office, read the posting, because in this dream, he can read English, because in this dream, he can read, fill out all the tax forms with a real address, a real social security number, then despite the lack of any sort of experience or training, steal the job, driving the forklift. From Gerald Thompson of Dubuque, Iowa. Maybe Pablo imagined freedom, or water, or fresh air. Air. This administration takes turns blaming them for our problems while immigrants in the back of a trailer took turns gasping for air, because this is what happens. When we say that you can become from nothing, work hard, accomplish your goals, but really mean that the nothing you come from is a town in Iowa or Ohio or Connecticut, not a country called Honduras or Guatemala or El Salvador. This is what happens when we use words like illegals, aliens, criminals, instead of humans. Humans that look like my cousins, look like my sister, like my children, like you, like me. Pablo headed north. His remains were shipped south. They lit 10 candles at the cathedral for them. 10 lights were extinguished. 10 flames ran out of oxygen. The Mixteca song says it's better to die of sadness than to be so far from home. Pablo knew that both these things are true. Prefiero llorar, prefiero morir de sentimiento. Thank you. I think I'm going to stay on this immigrant theme for a little bit. And this poem is inspired by just walking around my neighborhood. The school bus stop in front of my apartment looks like America, full of backwards caps, hoodies, and headscarves. I live in the most ethnically diverse zip code in Bexar County. Every trip to the laundromat down the street is an exercise in diplomacy. We gesture, we smile, we nod. We hope that we're understood when we say, "Excuse me, oh, I'm sorry, were you using that basket?" We watch while children, every shade of toothy smile, run between machines, as if navigating between continents, exploring new frontiers, oblivious to borders until they hit walls of dryers. And every mother speaks with her eyes because the look knows all unspoken languages. The store next to the laundromat knows all spoken languages. I've seen the Indian store clerk talk Spanish to the El Salvadoran dude who was doing his best to speak Vietnamese to the guy outside the store as they share cigarettes and talk about the Spurs. Down the block, there's a South Asian grocery store on the backside of a Thai restaurant next to a taqueria where I saw a Japanese med student introduce her visiting parents to carne guisada, and people of every nation order tacos. Further down the street, there's an abandoned parking lot that has been transformed into a soccer field. Because soccer knows all unspoken languages. And kids use sticks and stones to mark their makeshift goals. They don't care about regulation soccer balls, or white lines, or grass. These kids get along. They're held together with their broken English. They run and kick and scream. These Congolese, Burmese, Afghan, Eritrean, Ethiopian, Somali kids, Vietnamese, Filipino, Indian, Pakistani, Iraqi kids, El Salvadoran, Guatemalan, Honduran, Mexican, Serbian, Croatian kids, these newest American kids aren't diseases or criminals. The national emergency is how we treat them. These kids will outdo their parents. They're the ones that are going to make America great. Finally. This next poem, of course, I come from a family of immigrants, and this is about someone in my family. The northern Mexican, or norteño, is known for having a dry sense of humor. My tío Manuel is one of these Mexicans. He was trying to console me as my arm was in a cast for the third time in my teenage years, proving once and for all that I was not athletic. Hey, mijo, I had this friend, he broke his arm, and for 6 months he had it in a sling. But it was okay, porque ¿sabes qué? Tocaba la guitarra, so it didn't matter, he could still work. Tío Manuel lived at my grandma's house in Mexico, but on weekdays, he was building the road to Robstown. Then one day, he and Tia Lupe came to stay at our house, and before I knew anything about immigration laws, understood that I lived on a border, or knew the term anchor baby, my prima was born. They went back to Mexico, and while my tia raised their daughter, Tío Manuel was building the road to Kingsville. They saved up enough to buy land, and before I knew what a colonia was, or realized that most neighborhoods in America actually had paved streets, they built a house, had another daughter. Tío Manuel was also building the road to Corpus Christi that year. I get nervous shaking my Tío Manuel's hands. His great, big, rough hands are really just one big callus, developed from years of dealing with bosses demanding a faster pace, a South Texas sun that never quits, and the ignorance of people who can sit, claiming the American dream is being stolen while immigrants stand to make it possible. He was the Mexican labor force that built his own house, installed the doors that welcomed every hungry relative, installed windows from where my cousins could look out and dream of a world beyond the walls that his father built, instilled values, invented stories, insisted that despite all the hardships, we take the time to tell jokes about broken-armed guitarists. And the only thing broken in that house is his English. He fixed the pipes, fixed the wires, the cabinets, fixed his own status. I feel guilty clasping his hands. They got that way from picking up shovels and picks. All I ever pick up are pens and expo markers. Compared to him, I haven't done anything to earn my place in this world that he put together, all because I had the fortune of being born on this side of the river. He built the road to your hunting lease, built the road that takes you to spring break on Port A. And when I say he paved the way for his daughters to go to the University of Texas, I mean it literally. Somewhere along the journey, he also made his own pathway to citizenship. Mr. President, Mexico did send their best. And I'll be darned if you say he's anything but an American. This next poem is about a little bit closer to home, not the immigrant stuff, I guess. Or maybe it's about a different sort of migration. It's about what has been happening in our city. I'm sure it happens in many cities. But I want to, well, I'm not going to tell you the title because it'll give it too much, it'll give it away. If white people are going to insist on the gentrification of our neighborhoods, then the only solution is to insist on the gentification of theirs. Because we want equality. Because make San Antonio great again. Because all houses matter. So come on, y'all. Let's gentify Stone Oak. Put a bus stop on every corner with an elote stand and a street preacher. Every stoplight on TPC Parkway will have to alternate between the guys from the Victory Church running out to give you their pamphlet, kids selling candy apples and banana bread, people selling bootleg Spurs shirts, and seasonal vendors with Valentine's Day flowers, cascarrones, Easter baskets, piñatas, and giant blankets with the Dallas Cowboys logo on them. Or a white-tailed deer. This neighborhood needs a pawn shop because every soccer mom knows that Adderall don't come cheap. And that James Avery charm, so last year. That Japanese Mediterranean fusion food truck is cute and all, but we need a vendor that actually moves every so often. So bring on the Raspa truck, playing the worst version of Pop Goes a Weasel on repeat, cruising down the street selling cold treats and hot Cheetos and cheese, pickles, Fred Flintstone orange push-up pops. When I get out of Costco, I want some dude to offer to wash my windshield for a few dollars. And I want to hear the dude from the Mary Louise bus stop drumming on the newsstand singing Motown hits do his thing on Redland Road. And the only cyclists should be paleta men on their cart bikes. And there should be cops everywhere slowing down to stare at the black Lexus SUVs. And sure, you can find a Brazilian steakhouse, but where's the $3.99 enchilada plate? And we don't need urgent care, we need a curandera and a palm reader. This whole hood needs more liquor stores and payday loan brokers, a Rios 595 family salon next to a Fred's Fish Fry, and that place where you can get your state inspection sticker regardless what kind of shape your car is in, and an H-E-B that has just 2 types of bread and 1 type of tomato and 23 varieties of Shasta. Because let's be honest, that neighborhood that is missing the characters that give a neighborhood character. So watch out, because we're going to gentify the north side, one San Antovato at a time. I guess I kind of want to, take it, change it up a little bit, and I'm going to do 2 love poems today, and 2 quick little love poems. This poem actually came from my just wanting to play with some words, and I like the way that some names and some words kind of came together, so that's how this was. Ay, Michelle, mi chula, mi chola. I'm all caught up in your aqua net, captured by your copete. Perfecto, sin fleco, con efecto, atento. Ya es tiempo que tú y yo saldremos en una cita, a las vistas, o al Sonic to have a shake. Ay, Michelle, mi chula, mi chola. The rhythm of your chanclas is a siren song I can't forget. Written with the wry smiles of your pencil-thin brows. I want to kiss your café con leche lips after we move our hips to cumbia rhythms and boleros con estilo. Ay, Michelle, mi chula, mi chola. I want to take you for a cruise in my Impala. Your legs go for days in esa minifalda. My heart goes for miles con tu sonrisa, como una brisa. Take me to misa. I'll be yours sin prisa, para siempre, tu chulo, tu cholo, all caught up in your aqua net. All right. I think I have time for just one more poem. And again, I want to thank everyone who made this possible here for Mega Corazon, the San Antonio people, the Texas people, the national people, everyone who had a hand in it. I appreciate everything that you've done. Come on, baby, let's go find a taco truck. Because you saw every dance move I got the first 5 minutes we were here. Every song is starting to sound the same as I hear it through your eyes. Come on, baby, let's go find a taco truck. Because we ate like 5 hours ago. And who were you kidding by just having that salad? Who was I kidding by saying I was full halfway through my entree? Come on, baby, let's go find a taco truck. We can cruise the west side from Callahan to Culebra, Commerce to Castroville. Let's drive with the windows down and appreciate this cool April air and dance in our seats to whatever Jam and Jay's got on the ones and twos. Come on, baby, let's go find a taco truck. We'll order some mini tacos de carne asada. Sprinkle some cebolla cilantro on them and some of that green salsa as we enjoy them on the hood of my Impala. Let's share a Mexican Coke together, because they say that cane sugar makes it sweeter, but I won't believe them, not until I taste it from your lips, cooled from that last swig. Come on, baby, let's go find a taco truck. Or maybe we can just drive west into the madrugada, because tomorrow's coming fast, and I want to outrun the daylight with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Eddie, for wonderful reading. Thank you, all the 10 artists that participated today. Many, many thanks from our hearts. And we want to thank the audiences who are watching. One of the things about Mega Corazón, it makes you hungry. So we'll take a break here at 1 o'clock right now and resume our quest for better foods at 6 p.m. to 10 tonight, when we have 13 poets who will be reciting in rapid succession. Thank you. Texas Commission on the Arts, National Endowment for the Arts, the City of San Antonio, the San Antonio Area Foundation, and the Friends of Urban 15 who've made this all possible. I want to thank our crew, Artistic Director Catherine Cisneros, and we have our project manager and head of the technology department, John Anderson, and we have Homer Villarreal over here doing audio and doing all the setup. We have, where's she at, Fabiola? Who's been our events coordinator, and then the person who couldn't make it here today is Marisol Cortez. Want to thank everybody for all their hard work. We will see you again at 6 p.m. Central Standard Time. Do get in contact with us about some suggestions for next year, or even the 6 o'clock show. You can find us events at urban15.org. Jacinto, there you are, and there's Moby. Okay. And Don, you did a great job. A lot of the poets are here the whole time. Jim, there you are. It's hard to see in the light. Thank you from Urban 15, live in San Antonio. Mega Corazón.